the Digital Poverty Alliance is a charitable coalition, and we bring together government, industry, and third sector organisations. In all cases, whether that's at national level, regional level, local level, community level, in our mission to end digital poverty once and for all by 2030. We do this through a range of different ways, including advocacy, research, and delivery projects, bringing together our community through events, through a community board, and through our online community hub. I'm delighted today that we are joined by Beverly Clarke, who is one of our fantastic DPA ambassadors. She's also a trustee of our parent charity, the Learning Foundation, an award-winning children's author, a consultant, and one of the winners of Tech Women 100 in 2022. Beverly will tell you far more about herself, and we're going to have a little fireside chat today and learn a bit about Beverly's experiences and how they have influenced her to get to where she is today. We'd love it as well if you would help us to make sure this is an interactive session. So do say hello in the chat. Do say who you are, where you're from, both geographically and organisationally, and why you've come along today. And also, as we go through, if you do have any questions, please do pop them in the Q&A. You should see a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And hopefully, if we've got a little bit of time at the end, we'll be able to pass those questions on to Beverly to answer live. But now, over to you, Beverly. Could you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that very, very warm welcome. So I'm Beverly Clarke, and I have got a long background in education. But before we got to education, I started off in corporate IT. And due to life changes, I then retrained to be a teacher. I started lecturing at a local college down in Weybridge in Surrey. And the life changes were having 2 children. And so I used my transferable skills from working in IT for big corporates like Capgemini and Esso and Exxon, and then I moved into lecturing. So I spent about 7 years lecturing down in Weybridge in Surrey, and I started to notice a mismatch between what was being taught and what was required in the corporate sector. So this had stayed with me. And then I wanted to progress my career. So then I retrained again, and this time to teach in a secondary school. And again, that mismatch was still there between corporate and industry and what was being taught. And through being in a secondary school, I got involved back then with an organization called Computing at School, usually abbreviated to CAS. And that's a grassroots organization of computing teachers and anyone interested in computing and tech to come together and speak and how to basically get computing onto the curriculum. Because back at that time, it was just ICT, and it wasn't, computing was not being formally taught. And it was literally just an internet search that led me to getting involved with Computing at School on a voluntary basis. And I sent emails out pre-GDPR days when you could do that. And I networked with local teachers and said, there's going to be curriculum changes coming. Let's get together and let's ensure we can do the very best for our young people and for ourselves, so we know what we're doing. And that was really, really successful. And so I spent 7 years down in another part of Surrey doing that. So after 14 years teaching, I then decided to move to Wiltshire for all things for love. So I moved across to Wiltshire, and I've been involved with CAS, and CAS is part of BCS, a Chartered Institute for IT. And basically, I was asked to then cover the southwest region here, where I live, to reinvigorate computing. So I literally have been everywhere across the southwest, all the way down to Land's End, meeting teachers and reinvigorating the region, bringing teachers together at conferences, going to visit them in their schools, and understanding their needs, because there are lots of different needs, in the rural areas, in the cities, in touristy places like Exeter. There are many, many different needs. So I did that, and I also started developing my portfolio career. So that, there are lots of different opportunities, which I'll talk about later, which came to me during that period. And After successfully covering the Southwest, I was then invited to do that again at national level as the National Community Manager for Computing at School, which I did for 3.5 years. And that again led to lots of opportunities and also challenges to manage a community of people for going from physically meeting to virtually through the pandemic. And myself and my team, we did that extremely successfully. And that, we took CAS and a message of computing for all to a very wide audience, and in some cases globally, because others looked to us to see what we were doing. So that's this sort of education journey. And as I mentioned, there's lots of other things that have gone alongside that, such as writing, speaking. There's been lots of other activities which have come alongside that.
Amazing. And you, when we were marketing this webinar and we were talking to you about what we might cover today, you referenced a squiggly career journey, I think was your exact word. And you've mentioned some of those other pieces that you have been working on alongside your sort of what many people would consider a core full-time job. You have had this portfolio of work. How would you describe some of those other bits and how they have been vital to get you to where you are today?
I would describe them as really, really important. So the first opportunity that ever came was from the Computing at School National Coordinator at the time, Simon Humphreys, and he recommended me to someone who was doing some work for the BBC to be the subject matter expert for some script writing. And I'd never done that before, and I literally started sweating. And the person who was speaking with me, he said, "Have you done it before?" And I said, "No, I haven't, but I know what you need." And he said, "Okay, let's just go with it." And so there's a set of BBC bite-sized videos still online, which I'm the scriptwriter for, but part scriptwriter, the subject matter expertise there. So we went back and forth, and I started learning an awful lot at that point. And it's a series, it's called How to Think Like a Computer. But of course, computers don't think, but it's a play on words and a little short bite-sized clips that can be used within the classroom and home learning and everywhere else. So that was the first thing. And then I'd also started just contributing articles about my practice to a magazine that's gone out of publication since. It was called Switched On, and that got me writing. And then another big opportunity presented itself. I was asked to come and speak to trainee teachers through BCS, and just this opportunity to speak, develop your practice. So I was getting involved in all of those things alongside a full-time job of running a department and raising a family. But I enjoyed it. So when you enjoy something, you've got a passion, you do tend to go that extra distance to get things done. And then in 2016, I got an offer again through BCS, who have been very good to me over the years, it was basically, we really feel a book needs to be written to invite and attract new entrants into teaching computer science, because computing is a shortfall subject. There is this massive shortage of teachers. And it's also a subject which many people shy away from at times because it's seen as too technical and really, really hard. It isn't. Lots of different aspects to computing. So I had the conversation. We just came up with a table of contents, and I had to start developing that. And the remit was 30,000 words. And I came home and I thought, oh, what have I committed to? 30,000 words? I've never written that much in my entire life. I even made a phone call and said, could we reduce the number of words? That was why I had sort of doubt there. But I did it, and it's well over 55,000 words. I just sat there and started typing. And I was so proud of myself for doing that. And off the back of that, you start learning a whole load of other skills. How do you market a book? There's a book launch. Who do you invite? Why are you inviting this particular audience? So there's lots of other things that you don't think about initially, but then you start to develop as you go along. So it's a journey of learning as you go.
That's amazing, Beverly. And actually, yes, how many of us have been asked to do something and we've gone on reflection, oh my gosh, I can't possibly do this. And then actually you start and you're exactly the right person to do it. And I think that really shows. So you've talked a little bit about that career journey. How has that shaped your view and your experiences around the role that education plays in improving digital literacy and alleviating digital poverty?
Immense. Education is really, really important. It's about I'd say, everyone, not just the young people, seeing our place in the world and how tech impacts upon us. So I do a talk currently about the impact of technology on ourselves, our community, and society. I see it at 3 levels, and we should really start thinking about technology in that way, is what I think, to help us to really understand, so it doesn't just consume it, really think and start to question what is actually going on, question the headlines, question what's happening. And I think within, say, school environments, I think we need to start seeing more role models, more interaction with industry, more entering young people into competitions and challenges to really basically infuse them with tech. And it isn't just that we're trying to get people into STEM careers, it's also, how does tech just impact you and what you want to do? So you're a consumer of technology, okay? And then the whole piece with digital poverty, I've noticed someone on the call today from the Good Things Foundation who are, work in the same space as we do here, the Digital Poverty Alliance. There's a really great periodic table of internet elements, which I really like. And if anyone has a Google for that, that table, very much like the periodic table in science, it just shows all of the different elements out there. So if it's medical, if it's education, if it's transport, if you don't have access and you don't understand how to use technology, all of these areas are locked out to you without understanding tech. So, for example, this morning, I had a doctor's appointment. It was a video appointment. So if I don't have the device, I don't have the connectivity, and I don't understand how to use the tech, there is then a problem. So you're locked out. And that's just one example in one person's life. And this isn't a private doctor, this is an NHS. So this is something that's for everyone. We all need access to tech. If you want to travel across London, you're using an Oyster card, you've got to top it up. There's lots of processes there to you've got to break them down. So that whole thing of computational thinking, you're solving problems. I don't know if anyone has topped up an Oyster card or a contactless card recently, but for me, it's really easy to tap your payment card, or tap your Oyster, tap your payment, and forget to re-tap the Oyster card. So there's a whole lot of processes. I've literally got to remember what I'm doing. So back in the classroom, when embedding computational thinking, we really need our young people to start thinking. And also, has that system been designed in the most efficient and effective manner to support everyone? So I do think education is really, really important in meeting digital at all levels.
Thank you. And definitely, we visited a school a couple of weeks ago on one of the programs that we are supporting, and it was great to see young people who'd been provided with laptops through this program. But it was also terrible to hear how previously they, and of course other students who hadn't been on this scheme, were trying to write essays. They were trying to do their homework on borrowed mobile phones, and that's not a route to effective education that's going to help people to achieve the accreditation that they need, and then also have the aspiration that they need for the future. And of course, you've also taken some other action around this, because you've written a couple of books around EdTech. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about this series, and also how you hope that will then benefit young people?
Yes, so as I mentioned, the very first book, which I think you can see in the back on the top, Computer Science Teacher, that was the one that I published in 2017 when I first found my self-belief. And, you know, that really teaches and shows anyone who's interested in joining the profession what it's like to teach in a computing classroom. Because if you haven't been in a computing classroom, it's laid out, generally laid out quite differently from, say, an English language or a maths classroom. And this can present certain challenges. There's also the challenge of equipment, software, there's lots of other challenges. And just to understand what's needed in that classroom. So that was the first one. So it's based upon my insights into the computing classroom. And then during the pandemic, I had a moment of reflection, as I'm sure we all did during the pandemic. And I thought about a couple of things that I've been hearing ever since I was at university. There aren't enough women, and we know this to be true because the statistics do back this up, not enough women in technology, and also there's a lack of people from underrepresented groups. And I thought to myself, I'm national manager of computing at school, female, underrepresented group. What can I do to change what's going on within technology? So I feel that we need to address the problem a lot earlier with young people, with children. And I started reflecting upon where are the books that young children read as bedtime stories? Where are they interacting with tech? And I don't feel they are. So that's my opinion on this one. And I also had an experience where someone had delivered from a well-known supermarket to my door. And we had a conversation. It was a woman delivery driver. And we spoke about what I did for a living, and she just said, "Oh, no, none of that computer stuff for me." And I thought, well, you found my house. There's GPS, there's navigation systems. Your car has got sensors in. Your van has got sensors in it. And then she said, "Oh, my grandson, he uses all the computers." And I thought, but she's using tech, but she isn't seeing herself as part of tech. And the supermarket has a supply chain which is going to be managed with tech. And I thought, where are the stories? So out of that, I thought I'd write one book. But then I realized there was a series. And out of that came the digital adventures of Ava and Chip. So I based it on my own experiences when my girls were younger, but I balanced it with a girl and boy, one of my nephews. And it's basically a series of adventures, digital adventures. In the first book, they go to a smart city. Now, London is an example of a smart city, Milton Keynes, Bristol. So we've got a lot of smart cities here in the UK, and they're more up north also, because I'm down in the south. But we've also got cities like Barcelona globally, Singapore. There are loads of examples of smart cities. So in that first book, they're traveling on a train, and so they're interacting with payment systems. They're starting to understand what data, information, sensors, cameras collecting, data, algorithms, and mom in the stories modeled upon myself with her children. So I wanted there to be a strong female role model talking to her children, not shying away from tech. And you know what? It's okay to say you don't know. Let's find out also, because I certainly don't know everything. So it's just that whole thing of let's just read for pleasure. Let's talk about technology for pleasure. So that's where Smart City was born. And again, I learned lots of new skills there because I self-published it. I thought, I can't wait for anyone to approve this as such. I'm going to self-publish it. So that's my passion project that I just made a reality. And there's a whole long list of things that you learn and processes to self-publish your book. And then, well, because I just penned them during the pandemic, I also published a second one, Self-Driving Car. Now, self-driving car is not part of the future. It's right here, right now. And, there's just on Jeremy Vines, if you notice on my social a few months ago, I tweeted out, there's an autonomous bus stop in Oxfordshire. I need to get across there and have a ride on the autonomous bus. There is still a human at the wheel, but the human doesn't do anything. per se. So these are the conversations that could easily be had with our children regarding, well, if that person won't be there or there's reduced need, what is the impact? What do you need to learn? Just ask the questions, read stories alongside. And I'm going to produce another one. Just keep the series going, because I really feel strongly that we need to have these conversations. And I sort of ran into the TV parenting expert, Sue Atkins, online, and I'm part of her book club. And she shares that message quite a lot. So I was very pleased to have that shared on the Jeremy Vine show about a month ago, because, she said, look, we really need this, because, as a parenting expert, she said, how do we talk to our children about tech? And there is this big, big gap. So from my teaching experiences, my observations in the industry, and being a parent, and my children did not go into tech careers. I didn't do that bit very well. I think technology books for children are much, much needed.
Fantastic. And I mean, we have many generations that sit behind us in terms of, how we teach children about the world around us. But we don't really actually have that generational experience yet of tech. So anything that can be provided that can help parents to start those conversations surely has to be a good thing. And you've been recognised, not just actually with the awards that you've received for the Adventures in Chip and Ava, but also your recent Tech Women 100 award. So many congratulations for that. You've started to talk about the need for strong female role models within the tech industry. What methods do you think can be adopted to help build digital skills amongst women? And do you think that women in tech actually can impact digital inclusion and diversity in the UK workforce in a positive way?
I'm going to break that down a few different pieces. So thank you, first of all, for the congratulations on the award. So what can we do to support women?
Yes, to gain digital skills.
Okay, so I think that comes with meeting women where they are and their needs. So one of the things that I did this year was volunteer to be a UN Women delegate, and I was able to start hearing the stories of women around the world, and that was really insightful. So it's, what does this woman here, wherever she is, what does she need to interact with tech? So it's, there's the physical bits, the devices, the connectivity, but it's also access to training. How far does a woman have to travel to go to get that training? To balance that against things like family commitments, because we're still at a stage where the majority of childcare here and globally falls to women. So it may not be convenient to travel miles. So how do we get this the training for women? So maybe it's something that could take place at a school. Where are women going, and where can we get them to interact with technology? What do they need technology for? Well, that internet periodic table of internet elements almost sums up quite a lot of why we need access to tech. So I'd say that piece of meeting women where they are is really, really important.
Yes, I think that is growingly becoming apparent in a number of DPA projects as well, is that there's a lot of assumptions that we make really on the basis of our own experiences. But not everyone is in that same position. Not everyone had that shared experience, particularly during the pandemic, where people sort of imagine that everyone was on Teams, everyone was sitting on Netflix, skiving off while they were working from home. Not that I ever did that, I'd like to be very clear to everyone. But actually, for a lot of people, that wasn't the reality. They either couldn't afford to, or actually they had so many other duties that kept them away from the internet in any way, and it's still not sort of perceived as relevant to them. Do you think that actually bringing women into more technology roles could help to actually make services more accessible, more diverse, and really improve how some of these services are designed?
Absolutely. So involving women in the design phase, the testing phase, the sales phase, those are all jobs in tech. And women should be involved in all aspects of this. And I think we're at a stage, it isn't good enough to say we cannot find someone, we cannot find a woman of this demographic, or we can't find women. I think we need to look a bit harder. And I had this conversation with a company last week, which is predominantly male in IT services. And I said, well, have you considered offering, an apprenticeship to a young lady from a local college or something, as opposed to waiting until someone is fully skilled up? It's about being creative. How can we change? So where there's a will, there's a way. So do you want to see more women? Yes. Then what are you going to do about it? And it really is go out and find people. Where are you placing your adverts? And also, very importantly, ensure that the environment that you have, in which your employees are is actually inclusive, so that person actually feels they belong within that environment. Because that's the other thing that people can start leaving because they don't feel welcome. So it's there's a lot to think about there. So that whole diversity, equity, and inclusion piece is really important. Why would you want to come and work for us? And what happens when you work here? Is it a welcoming environment for a woman?
Absolutely. And actually that leads on to something we were, a couple of us were discussing in the team, which of course, and actually you almost alluded to this earlier on around imposter syndrome, which is a huge issue for women actually generally, but definitely for women in technology. We know, it's well known, that women are less likely to apply for a job if there's a few essential criteria they don't meet. Women won't apply. A man will look at the same job description and go, well, I can do nearly half of it. That's good enough. Get that application in. Do you have any advice for people who are experiencing imposter syndrome, whether they're entering the world of technology or moving across from other industries, or even going for that big next step?
Yeah, self-belief is really important here. And so aside from self-belief, sometimes we all suffer just a little bit of sort of internal murmurings. Oh, am I good enough? And I think this is where having a mentor or a coach could help you to find that little bit of self-belief. Also looking at women who are role models and just taking a bit of what they're doing and implementing that, and just having that network around you of men and women who say, go for it. So surround yourself with people who feel that you can do it and they're on your side. So when any imposter syndrome happens, just say, I'm here, I'm at this table, I can do this, and put your best foot forward, because the other person doesn't necessarily know any more than you do. And I think this is probably a bit societal. As women, we're not used to saying, I'm really good at that. Or because the things apply to us, terms like bossy, big-headed, and all of that. It's like, well, no, why can't I say, I'm an award winner, I'm a top woman in tech? And that's something that some people freeze when they hear that, or and it's also, you don't know everything, and so no, I don't know that, but I can introduce you to someone, or I can find out, and it's I'd say just keep practicing it.
Absolutely. That sort of modesty, I think, is taught to us at an early age, perhaps in a way that it isn't taught to all men. Of course, imposter syndrome can affect anyone of any gender, and it can be quite hard to overcome. And you often hear people talking about moving into technology and the kind of jobs and skills that they'll need to develop, and people often go down those hard skills, programming languages. But what soft skills do you think are just equally important for a successful role in technology?
Lots and lots of soft skills. So networking, how do you speak to people online and in person? You know, what are the rules of online networking and in-person networking? So that's really important. Your communication skills, ensuring the right information is communicated in a timely fashion. It's things like being adaptable, being able to listen, hear the opinions of others. Even if you disagree, you need to be able to hear, to communicate back, to have those conversations and those debates and discussions, really, and to take others with you on a journey. Really, really important. So, leading a team at national level, there may be areas, and there were, that not everyone agreed on, but it's being able to explain what's going on here, that transparency, and taking your team with you and taking others along with you. So those soft skills are really important, and just understanding something that, empathizing with other people. Not everyone feels great every day, and checking in. So this, how are you? How are you feeling? How was your weekend? Just setting, a nice tone. It doesn't always have to be straight in, I'm going to show you how I've coded this thing, because basically maybe ChatGPT might do away with all of that hard coding that people are, showing. So it's about relating to people. And as a former teacher, I've always said, and it's a quote I've got in my book, that teaching is a people business. And it's understanding your learners, understanding your colleagues, understanding the wider community, parents. It's really about a lot of things, and those are all soft skills.
Absolutely. And actually, a lot of those skills will go for any career that anyone is considering embarking on. So some sage advice there. How do we, you mentioned you're in teaching, how do we encourage teachers to embrace and educate the students around technology careers? Especially, we know that there is almost as much of a disconnect between the access that teachers have to devices and connectivity and digital services as there is for students.
I really think, it's based upon my own experiences and observations, I think that we need to really foster that teaching to industry link a lot more. So teachers I've got a lot of work going on, but that industry link, get STEM ambassadors in, get industry in, let them speak to the pupils, take pupils along to STEM days, STEAM days. You've got to work with outside people and look beyond the walls of the school and beyond the school compound, really, to really inspire your pupils. And I personally feel that's key.
Indeed, and of course that's more challenging in some of the rural and coastal communities that you were identifying earlier on. If you're based in a city, you've got to see it to be it. Well, at least you can see there's some aspiration there. Whereas in some areas, particularly areas where we've been working, say the Norfolk coast, South Wales, the Cumbrian coast, and so on, actually there aren't those opportunities sort of on the doorstep. How do you think teachers can maybe use technology to overcome some of those boundaries to accessing those kind of inspirational role models?
Well, two ways. So the internet is fantastic. I've noticed that Amazon have got work experience and a day in the life of a workshop, so that teachers can invite an Amazon expert into the classroom, for example, online, and to give that experience. I'd also say that some of the more rural areas, the tech isn't necessarily obvious. There's lots of offshore wind farms. There's lots of stuff going on off some of the coasts. You mentioned the Norfolk coast. And so there are companies that are there doing that, and I'd reach out to them to get them to talk about how they're developing things like digital twins online in labs before employing digital, setting up wind farms. So there is actually a lot when you scratch below the surface. There's things like technology in agriculture, because agriculture is being transformed by tech. So there's all the crop tech shows. So there's got to be someone there, perhaps a parent in a local area. There's farmers. What is a local farmer doing? So I had this challenge years ago. I did a talk in Dorset, and it was about looking at what was going on in some of the rural areas and how we can show young people that tech was for them. So I'd say that it's just scratching a bit further to see what's going on locally and also bringing the experts in online.
And actually that absolutely relates back to what you were saying about the lady who delivered you shopping and didn't see technology as something relevant to her, even though she'd used it probably all day, every day for the last few weeks or months.
Yeah.
Actually, every job either is or possibly will become a job using digital, using tech. So it is about looking at the non-obvious. You mentioned ChatGPT earlier. How do you see that? Do you see that as a threat to jobs? Do you see that as an amazing opportunity for people?
It's good question, Elizabeth. And I keep yo-yoing with this one. And I've used it quite a lot. So one of the first things I did was thought, right, I've just been writing children's stories. Well, let's see what it could do. And it was very good at using the key words, but I felt it lacked with some of the emotion and conversations. But I'm thinking we could use it almost like a calculator to generate a base, and then we can polish it in things like writing. In terms of imagery, I think it's going to unleash creativity, because exploring something like DALL-E, I mean, I sat there and I just started speaking and things were being created for me. And I thought, wow, that's never been done before. So I think it presents fantastic opportunities and untapped opportunities. I haven't a clue what it's going to present, but the issues, we need to consider issues of bias in algorithms. And to the best of my knowledge, those things are not transparent. And that is what we really need to be questioning. Who's actually the gatekeeper behind all of this? And that's where the impact is going to be upon us. So I think life's going to change. I don't need to outsource my brain quite yet, but it's going to be interesting. I think it's quite exciting to be around right now at this change in another industrial revolution.
Absolutely. And we've seen a lot of change. We've also seen a lot of change actually in how people use digital. Of course, we all used to sit in front of PCs, and then we started sitting in front of laptops, which of course I'm doing now. That's how most of us do our daily work if we work behind a screen. But for lots of people, of course, their main way of accessing the internet is through a mobile phone. And something we're quite interested in at the DPA is around people using mobiles tend to be consuming content, and people using laptops tend to be a bit freer to create content, whether that's writing, whether it's drawing, whether it's having a conversation with AI and perhaps creating things that way. Do you think that those boundaries will continue, or do you think actually, AI could change all of that and people will be far more creative without needing some of the traditional skills like typing and using a mouse?
I think AI is going to change a lot, and I do think voice is going to become even bigger than it currently is. The ability to speak is going to change things. So that's where this extra creativity is going to come. The iPad, the touch screen, maybe it's a thing of the past. And what I also I don't think any of us truly know, is the metaverse and how all the headsets how our interactions are going, what it's going to look like, really. So, as I said, it's a time to be alive, really. It really is, because we don't know. We're standing on a sort of cusp of a lot of massive change.
And of course, that kind of change, industrial revolutions, is something we've been through before. But also we know that in the UK and around the world, there is a digital skills crisis. I believe Lloyds Bank data shows around 10 million people don't even have the foundational skills to be able to turn on and use a laptop. So given all the changes we've got versus that digital skills crisis, how would you say people should be starting to think about future-proofing their career?
So I've mentioned a couple of words like metaverse. So think about your career right now. What would you need to exist in the metaverse? How is your job going to change? And it's really to have that stark, real conversation. What do you need? And start training up for it. Because unbelievably, there are lots of courses out there. There are lots of skills courses. One of the things I heard at BET last week, the big EdTech event, the biggest one in the world, it takes place here in London. It was a few of the countries were saying we don't need people with degrees. We need learning for now. So you go, you learn, and you implement. So that's going to change. So we need to have a lot more knowledge and skills at our fingertips, and so this soft skill we mentioned earlier about being highly adaptable to the changes that are coming. So, for example, one of my children is at university studying its town planning and geography, but is it just to plan for the towns now, or is it for the town that's coming? So we were having a conversation about, okay, climate change is an issue. How would you look at the city you're in now? How would this be adapted to cope with climate issues? So all of the buildings may then be converted for solar energy. There's lots of things. And of course, here in the UK, can we get enough solar energy? It's different in different parts of the world. So it's that sort of thinking. So even doing a degree now, you still need to be thinking forward and future-proofing. So I'd say always think about what is happening, what are the trends in the industry. I follow a few futurists online just to see what's going on. I mean, this morning I was reading about 6G and holograms and things like that, and how our meetings will change. So what skills do I need to be able to interact in that world? So it's just always looking at what's next. So the case which I mentioned about the autonomous bus in Oxfordshire, so if you're a driver or you're teaching driving lessons or any part of that industry, what do you need to do to remain relevant? Because there may be less, your job may still exist, but there'll be less of them. So is it transferring your skills to flying drones? What are the new skills that you need to have? I mean, for me, I can't fly a drone. I've managed to crash them. So I'm just not the person to fly drones. But, there is a certain amount of skill there. So how are your skills transferable? So it's just looking, thinking, and having lots of conversations. Because that change is coming quicker and quicker.
And probably that willingness to try new things as well. Although I will say, I also tried flying a mini drone a few months ago. It was not a success, so I'm not going to take that up as a new hobby. Could be expensive. I tried doing that too much. I wanted to just pick up on a comment from one of our attendees in the chat around how particularly staff in education and health settings may not be digitally savvy. And particularly where those people are women, they've got their work, they've also perhaps got parenting or caring responsibilities, and they don't necessarily have that time to stop and learn digital skills. How would you say we could particularly be reaching out to women and trying to explain the benefits of learning tech learning those digital skills, possibly not even calling them digital skills, which can be an off-putting term. What might your reflections be around that?
It comes back, I feel, to meeting people where they are. So we need to have more access where people are going. So if people are going to the supermarket, although that's changing, or they're going to recreational spaces, just having lots of pop-up things. I mean, I know that's an investment piece, but just having more access. I mean, people are watching TV, they're watching shows. We could have more targeted adverts. People are playing games. So people are using tech, but not necessarily associating tech with themselves. So really digging deep. What are people doing? Where are they getting their information from? And that's a variety of different places. It could be that, when children go to school for the first time, there is something going on there. It's a parent-child activity, as opposed to taking the parents one way and the kids one way to do different things. It's a parent-child activity coming together. So I think there's a lot more we can do to be creative. Where can we get parents involved in, and women, into technology? And in terms of calling it something else, possibly, but right now I'm still with technology and digital.
Absolutely. Meeting people where they are and actually getting them to use it in a way that works for them and enhances what it is that they're trying to do, as opposed to using digital for the sake of it when there isn't a clear need for them, I think is still very much a challenge. Beverly, I want to thank you so much for coming along today and sharing your story. It's, I think, so important for us to be able to hear from some of the top-level women in digital inclusion and technology and computing. So it's fantastic to hear your story, and I hope that that's inspired some people perhaps on the call today. I'm going to come back to you in just a moment for any final reflections or final words that you'd like to leave people with. In the meantime, if you have enjoyed today's webinar, do sign up for our next, where our CEO, Paul Finnis, will be interviewing Rob Price, who's the Executive Director of Alchemy, and he'll be making the case for corporate digital responsibility. That is on the 13th of April at 1 p.m. And I think my colleague Ellie will probably drop a link in the chat where you can sign up to that, which would be fantastic to see you there. If you've enjoyed this conversation as well, do also visit digitalpovertyalliance.org and click Join Our Hub and become part of our community. We talk about all things digital inclusion, we share news, we share funding opportunities, there's a marketplace, there's so much you can do on there. And it's a fantastic place to make links with other people in the digital inclusion sector. But finally, Beverly, any final thoughts that you'd like to leave our attendees with today?
Thank you so much for this interview, Elizabeth, and thank you, Ellie, behind the scenes there. Thank you again to everyone who's attended. I can see a few messages coming through on screen, so thank you very much. All very nice messages there. And my final words would be, get a great network around you, and commit to growth. And growth is different for everyone, so it could be small steps, big steps, but just commit to growth and just seeing what's relevant to you right now to keep you involved in society right now, and just to ensure that you're future-proofed, really, and you can then be participating in everything that's going on. And question. Let's not forget to question what's going on around us. Curiosity. But thank you.
Thank you so much, Beverly. And yes, there's never been a more important time to be curious. So let's try and all live that this week. Failing all else, let's try and all live up to that. Thank you all very much. And we will see you again, hopefully, on the 13th of April. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.